Long-time sports reporter Tom Shanahan has a new book out, and it is about the segregation of college football in the 1960s. Ruffin McNeill, the former Pirate coach and ECU Hall of Famer, wrote the foreword in the book, and we'll talk all about that with Tom Shanahan, who joins us right now. Tom most recently had done some work covering the Pirates for the N&O. Hey, Tom, how are you? Great to see you again.
Yeah, I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on and for having this chance to tell the story. It's a largely unknown story about what happened with college football integration in the 1960s, and there were a lot of pivotal people in North Carolina and schools, and people don't know it in our state, and they should know it. And thank you for helping me spread the word.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I've always enjoyed your work, as you know. The Right Thing to Do is the name of the book, The True Pioneers of College Football Integration in the 1960s. Let's start with the Ruff and McNeil part of this, because obviously Ruff grew up in some of this. And why did you choose Ruff to write the foreword to the book?
Yeah, so as I was starting to wrap it up, I started thinking about a forward to it. And Ruff is really kind of lived this history in a unique way, and he actually intercepts with Michigan State. The book does have a lot to do with Michigan State because Duffy Doherty led college football integration with his teams. They were the first fully integrated teams in the country in the 1960s. But Ruff intersects with the team through Jimmy Ray, who was from Fayetteville, played at
Yeah.
E. Smith, which was then a segregated school. And Ruff's brothers, I'm sorry, father and uncles played with Jimmy Ray. So he was always aware of him as a kid when he grew up in Lumberton. And Ruff had told me once I got to know him that Jimmy Ray inspired him to get into coaching.
Hmm.
And so let me give you a real quick background on Jimmy Ray so you can understand why black coaches didn't really have many people to look up to in the 70s before Jimmy Ray. And Jimmy Ray was the quarterback at Michigan State when they won the national titles in 1965 and 1966. He was the South's first black quarterback to win a national title, but he also was a pioneer when Duffy Doherty hired him as an assistant coach. And then when Jimmy Ray went on to the NFL in 1977, there were only 7 other black assistant coaches in that 28-team league. And then by 1983, Jimmy was the second offensive coordinator in NFL history when Robinson of the Rams hired him. And throughout this time in the late 70s and the 80s, he became a mentor for many black coaches, including Tony Dungy on down. Tony Dungy mentioned Jimmy at his Hall of Fame induction. And he also, while he was traveling the country, scouting players, going to colleges, he kept his eye open for a black coach that needed a chance, the chance that he got from Duffy Doherty, because most
Hmm.
black players were not getting those chances. And so this inspired Ruff, and Ruff has had a great career, and it should be celebrated. He shouldn't be remembered for East Carolina making the mistake of firing him, and he should be celebrated. And I just thought he was a great choice to write the forward, and he did an excellent job for me.
That's awesome. We all know that Ruff is a great, just a great guy, and you gave the Jimmy Ray background. In some of the materials that you initially sent over, Ray was part of an Emmy award-winning NFL films documentary in the last few years, wasn't he?
Yeah, the NFL 360 NFL Network put it out in 2023. It was called The Indelible Legacy of Jimmy Ray, and it won a sports Emmy. It was the director producer was a guy named Osahan Tongo, who is actually from Naperville, Illinois, but he played at Georgia Tech. And what I found interesting about Osahan is because this has been my gripe with the NFL Network beforehand, and still with the Big Ten Network, is they don't understand as a guy like Jimmy Ray and Sherman Lewis, another pioneering black coach and offensive coordinator that got his start from Duffy Doherty at Michigan State. They didn't really have a chance to be a head coach at the in their prime
Right,
years, and,
right.
and so you can't grade them on the same scale as Tony Dungy and Dennis Green. But the network executives, they kind of they don't think he's worth a story because the only successful coaches, black coaches in their mind, are Tony Dungy and Dennis Green. Well, Osa Hontago is a guy in his mid 30s, so he grew up well after the civil rights movement, and then he went from the north to the south, and he saw how the south could be different for a black man. And he started once he came across my book, Ray of Light, my first book about Jimmy Ray and Michigan State's 65 and 66 teams. He
Hmm.
started to wonder, boy, what was it like for these guys to emerge from segregation and still manage to make their way into the NFL? And so he understood what a dramatic story, what a great story it was that most national writers, I'm unequivocal on this, most national editors, writers, publishers don't understand. They think college football integration began with Bear Bryant waving his wand in 1970,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they've got it all wrong. And the national media is conveniently taking the easy story like they usually do, and Bear Bryant is the easy story.
Tom Shanahan, the brand new book, The Right Thing to Do: The True Pioneers of College Football Integration in the 1960s. I have to imagine that the integration of well, it was just like society. I'm sure integration came with a lot of setbacks, and the change did not come easily.
Yeah, it's a very slow process. Each guy, each school making their individual contribution until finally enough dominoes had fallen by 1970 that it was possible for Alabama to finally integrate. And when I say possible, Bear Bryant finally opened his eyes because he dragged his feet. He had Alabama's campus was desegregated in 1963. He had
Hmm.
the 1964 and civil 1964 and 65 civil rights acts on his side, yet he waited until 1970 to integrate his program. And an excuse that the national media always makes for him is that Bear Bryant would have, George Wallace, the racist governor of Alabama, would have fired him if he hired a black coach. Well, George Wallace wasn't in office from 1967 until 1971. So that was 67, 68, 69. Bear Bryant continued to have only all white classes. Meanwhile, Kentucky, an SEC school, was integrated in 1966, and
Right.
Tennessee in 1967, and even Auburn, Alabama's in state rival, was integrated in 1969, and nobody fired Auburn's coach, Shug Jordan. But even before that, and this is why I say North Carolina has played some pivotal roles. We had
Uh
Michigan
huh.
State as the first fully integrated team playing in the South in 1964 at North Carolina. And then in 1964, you had Bob Grant from Jacksonville, North Carolina, integrating at Wake Forest. Wake Forest was the first ACC school to recruit black players out of high school and then
Hmm.
continue to recruit black players. They don't get enough credit for this. The national media tells a story about Darrell Hill was the first black player in the ACC at Maryland in
Right.
1963. True, but he was a senior transfer from Navy, and then they didn't follow up with recruiting more black players for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So really, the pioneer is Wake Forest.
Yeah. And I think maybe their basketball too was the first. I know we hear Charlie Scott a lot, but if I'm recalling correctly, that
Yeah,
their basketball team had that going
yeah,
as part of
I
their
didn't know
recruiting
this.
philosophy.
I didn't realize this until I did the research. Jack McCloskey, of course, better known for his NBA days with the Pistons, he was the coach at Wake Forest, and he was recruiting black players at the same time as Dean Smith. And maybe 1 year after, I'm not sure on that. I'd have to double check the facts. But the point being is, you only hear about Charlie Scott and Dean Smith. You don't hear about the other black pioneers who faced all the abuse from fans and all the resistance from society. They went through all those same things. It's a lot like Jackie Robinson broke the color line in 1947 in April with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But when Larry Doby was the first black player in the American League with the Cleveland Indians in the summer of 1947, he went through the same experiences. But we only hear
Yeah.
about Jackie Robinson.
The Right Thing to Do is the name of the book, The True Pioneers of College Football Integration in the 1960s. Where can people get the book from, Tom?
Well, they can go to Amazon, or they can go to my website, tomshanahan.report, and there are links on there to purchase the book, and I get a better royalty straight from my publisher, and I get a better royalty from my publisher than I do from Amazon.
So go to tomshanahan.report and go there. So Tom will get a little Skrilla for this. I mean, it's a great story, but you got to pay the bills. So any other books that you're thinking of endeavoring on, or that are kind of projects you'd like to work on?
Yeah. Well, first, let me add also, if people do go to my website, look for the graphic with the end game, and that's my podcast series with a lot of these true pioneers. And one of them is Bob Grant, episode 21. So you can listen to Bob's words about what he endured at Wake Forest, and because Bob this is the other thing about Michigan State. Michigan State was the North Star for black kids in the South before the Southern schools started opening their doors. Bob Grant was high school rivals with Jimmy Ray, and he planned to go to Michigan State until the Wake Forest coach Will Tate called up the Bob Grant's high school coach and said they wanted to be the first school. They wanted to desegregate, and they had targeted Bob Grant as a perfect kid for them to recruit. And Bob Grant followed his high school coach's advice, understanding that it was going to be tough, but it was going to help open doors for other black kids in the future. And that's exactly what he did. He's been honored by Wake Forest for their Trailblazer Award, and in 2022, the NCAA also honored him. So those podcasts are on there. And as far as my books, I wrote a children's book also that you can find on my website. And that's called Bubba's Dad, as in Bubba Smith's father, who was a legendary coach in Beaumont, Texas. And he was a chief engineer of Duffy Doherty's Underground Railroad, sending his son Bubba and many players from the Houston area. And it's called Bubba's Dad, Duffy, and College Football's Underground Railroad. And he drives the train through the South, picking up all these Michigan State pioneers. And on the way through North Carolina, I had to have him go through Fayetteville with Jimmy Ray, but out of respect to Ruff, because Ruff is such an important figure. I hope someday the National Football Foundation's Bill Dooley chapter will honor him for a lifetime achievement, or maybe even the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. Jimmy Ray deserves to be in there too. But out of respect to Ruff, I had the train drive through Lumberton, and Bubba Smith's dad instructed all the players to wave to him, said, "There's the future coach at East Carolina." He was inspired by Jimmy Ray.
Awesome stuff. Hey, Tom, great to see you again. Thank you for this, and good luck with the book.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Patrick.
All right, Tom Shanahan. Great to have him on today.